What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the Sexy Lady EP, Almost Famous, the Sexy Lady EP by Young Berg. Basically, this project came out in the summer of 2007, and it's known for one of his initial hit singles, Sexy Lady, which came out in the summer of 2007. So basically, some backdrop about Young Berg is the fact that he was initially signed to DMX's label back in the early 2000s and stuff, and later on he moved to Los Angeles, and then later after that became like a hype man and a recording assistant to Shauna from Ludacris's DTP label. But eventually he started getting in cahoots more with the industry and managed to put out an album. He started getting in cahoots more with the industry and managed to put out managed to put out this EP, started getting some hits kind of going and started popping up more. And I remember this project from back in the day. I remember he dropped an album in 2008, and I'm eventually going to cover that one. But I wanted to see what was up with this EP, which was the initial, for the most part, project that you would hear from him. It was the initial project for the most part that you would hear from him. He has dropped some mixtapes and such, but I would have to say this seems like this is one of the first ones. So I would just have to say amongst that, it does have some hits on here. Out of 6 songs, I wind up recommending to you about 3.5 out of 6 of them on here. So it actually has some pretty substantive stuff on here. And I would definitely have to kind of talk about the fact that the thing I like about Young Berg is the fact that a lot of the folks that he collaborates with on here are not necessarily folks that overtly people collab with. I mean, Twist is on here, Jim Jones and Rich Boy are on here for some more highlighted names, but there are some folks that are really low key and don't have much of wiki pages about them. And this is also an overall pretty suave ladies album. I mean, this has like some kind of sophisticated East Coast feel. So this is not so much of like a dirty South hip hop album like I initially thought, but it just has a more kind of, if you like the chandelier and kind of sophisticated kind of lobby music of like Wu-Tang and sampling of like Ghostface Killah and some of that type of stuff. It just kind of has a more kind of pseudo, kind of reflective, kind of East Coast kind of effectualness in the productions. I mean, Young Berg is from Chicago, so that's kind of the concept here. Is he's from Chicago, which is kind of the Midwest, but it's also closer to the East Coast in somewhat of a sense here. So I just would have to say, but the first single from this album is "Sexy Lady." The first single from this album is Sexy Lady, and basically this was a pretty triumphant song. I definitely liked this one. Had a very glissy kind of feel towards it. Just a real quick pace, nice ladies song. It's definitely a mid-outing song, and by that I mean it's kind of something that you'd listen to on the way out or being out and about, but it's not quite as heavy a hitter as like certain songs. You know, when you think of songs like Lollipop by Lil Wayne, or you think of songs like Get Money or A Milli by Lil Wayne or stuff like that, or We Fly High by Jim Jones or something like that, I would have to say it's just a mid kind of, I mean, it's not mid in terms of quality, but in terms of like social outing, just something to kind of listen to. It just kind of has like that light promo kind of feel where you're just looking flashy a little bit, stepping out, just has that mid outing kind of feel towards it. Very glissy song. Nice ladies cut, has a great hook on here. This Junior guy, I don't know what, I always wondered what happened to Junior from this song by Young Berg. This was a great song that I remember from back in the day, but I just don't know where the Junior guy went and why he wasn't used for further hooks, because this is just a really excellent one. I felt like he was keeping up with T-Pain and Akon back in 2007, but I just never really found any other songs that this guy did. But that's just kind of the concept. Young Berg does a great job on here. It's just a real kind of sophisticated and kind of like a suave kind of ladies cut on here. So this is kind of the concept. So so I'll recommend the 3.5 songs I recommend out of 6. So they would be Sexy Lady, Into It, Where Do We Go From Here, and Painkiller is the Almost song. So to talk about Painkiller, this is a good song, and I definitely like the production on here. This is very, yeah, the Almost song is Painkiller with Nikki Flores, just because I like this song. Has a really nice paced kind of high mid-tempo piano beat on here. It's kind of like a mid kind of dance cut. It's very contemporary. It feels like a nice social outing cut more than like a club cut. Just something where you kind of be socializing, a little bit fancier dressing, that type of stuff. Very saucy. But I look at the concept, there's a lot of Nikki Flores on this song, and Young Berg is just on the very beginning of the song and a short verse at the very end. He kind of just gave this song to Nikki Flores, which I think her melodies on here are quite good. But I think I definitely think Young Berg should have came through and anchored this song and made it more of his song. It's just good, but this is, I mean, considering that this is an EP in the first place, it showcases the fact that he can find hit songs, but he should have been on this song more to kind of claim it as his own territory. And I think that's just kind of the concept. But it is a pretty decent bop. Like I said, very contemporary and just for social outings. This would have to say it's a nice one. Probably the best club cut on here is Where Do We Go From Here with Twista. This is a very lively Where Do We Go From Here with Twista is a very lively and in-your-face nightclub smash. I feel like this is a very scaping cut. This has a real pulsating kind of energy about it. It has a real furious sample that just really feels all over the place, and this is kind of just atmospheric and scaping, just the way that it kind of turns out and such. Twista really handles this beat easily, considering how good of a lyricist he is. But Young Berg actually keeps up with them somewhat. For the most part, he does. Yeah, I would say for the most part, Young Berg keeps up with Twista on here. He can rap pretty quickly. It's just an interesting tone to get from Young Berg to see him be on a song like this when he's usually in like the ladies fashion and that type of stuff, more of like the kind of fabulous type songs and that type of stuff. So it's just interesting kind of get it, but it's definitely like a pretty atmospheric club song. It just really feels like immersive, and I really like the concept behind that. It's just really kind of a chilling song to listen to in a nightclub, something like that. And then Into It's a nice one. I like the hook on here. It's pretty simple. It's just kind of like a regular rap song as far as the hook goes. It's not quite a ladies song or like a pounding club song like some of these other ones, but I do have to say it is kind of for the ladies, but it's just kind of in a more hardcore rap sense. This feels like a really graceful. This is what I talk about here with some of these beats being East Coast, because this one just feels like elevator music and hotel kind of music type stuff, something in like a hotel lobby with like the waterfalls going, something like that. And this is a real city hopping shopping kind of tune. Some of these places that you go out in the East Coast, thinking of some stores, this like fancy kind of stores like Fubu and places like that, where you'd find some of these clothings and that type of stuff as far as that kind of went. Sean John, some of these type places. But I just would have to say, really a nice city hopping tune. This really feels fancy and just graceful overall. I like this one. I haven't heard too many beats with this. Is not a beat that's copied in overabundance. So this is just a nice tempo for Young Berg to kind of get some of these ladies joints, but then also kind of do hardcore rap and be able to pull it off. So that's kind of the concept here. The only two songs I didn't enjoy was just the Sexy Lady remix with Jim Jones and Rich Boy, and then Almost Famous with Miss Monette. So I just would have to say the reason why I didn't like Almost Famous is this was just kind of a personal cut on here, which I felt like it's just too soon to kind of have some of these thought-provoking songs when really Young Berg only had the one hit to his name, which was just Sexy Lady. I think he definitely needed to follow it up. And probably, I think he should have established something with the second single. I mean, he did get further hits on his album the next year from 2008, but it would have kind of been questionable at the time to see if he would have had the hit potential to have done it. So I just felt like that one was just kind of a blunder. And then Sexy Lady Remix, that one was kind of a blunder also, just because it switches the pretty pounding beat from Sexy Lady and then just kind of makes it into like a kind of crummier version of a song. Jim Jones and Rich Boy are at least on here, but they don't rap to the beat that the original Sexy Lady was on. And it just is like a worse version. So it just doesn't compare to the original Sexy Lady. That's the far superior version. So I just would have to say, and then Painkiller's kind of an almost song because Young Berg's not on it enough. I do feel like there's plenty of hits on here, at least enough to be able to sate like the idea of picking it up if you can find it and just having a decent time. I feel like the only other complaint I would really have about this project is just the fact that it just doesn't have extra ammo apart from the single. I think it's pretty easy to distinguish Young Berg and say that the best song is Sexy Lady, because some of these are good, but they just don't have the impactful immediate bite of Sexy Lady, and especially in terms of hooks, it just doesn't have that star power. Painkiller just doesn't quite deliver enough. I mean, it's a good contemporary R&B tune, but it just doesn't have the meme like contemporary, the meme like kind of immediate bite of Sexy Lady. And Into It's just like a standard album cut. And Where Do We Go has a decent sample, but it might be over the top for some people. I definitely feel like it's immersive, but it may be a little bit over the top in some cases. So yeah, that's about the only problem. Is just Young Berg he delivers and definitely gives some sophisticated kind of East Coast vibes that have like this glossiness, kind of like a southern fried version of Fabulous almost. But I just feel like it just probably needed at least another hit to really anchor this project to kind of keep him in people's heads for longer. And it just didn't really deliver on that. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, the 2008 album that he dropped kind of came and went pretty quickly. And it's kind of odd that that happened just because he had a number of hits on there. He actually got a hit with Ray J and maybe one or two other ones. So that's just kind of the concept. So, but I give this EP out of 10, I give it a 6.75 because I did like over half of the project, like, just about 2/3 of the project, almost 2/3. But I just kind of feel like it's here and there. It's just above average, but it's not like an excellent project. It's just good, but it's not super excellent. So I just would have to say 6.75. In terms of the social score, I'll give the social score like a 6 out of 10 also because it does have the cuts on here, but it doesn't really have like a massive club smash. I feel like Where Do We Go is solid, but it's not like the killer kind of above all killer kind of song that was needed, but it is good. And it's just kind of the concept. Most of this is just ladies' cuts and more sophisticated kind of schmoozing and just kind of pillow talking and that type stuff in that sort of sense. But I just look after it just to kind of have the context of being able to say that this is a pretty solid album, but it just lacks like a follow-up superb hit and something with a little bit more hardcore crunchy bite of like a nasty club song or something. But apart from that, it's pretty rock solid. So in terms of the future, like Young Berg has kind of been around. He goes by the name Hitmaker now. He kind of produces and A&Rs and some of that type of stuff. But I just wonder, I mean, supposedly I looked on his Wikipedia. He does have other projects not underneath the Young Berg name, but I might have to check some of these out. But I'm at least going to review at some point Young Berg's 2008 album.